Normally on the show, we attempt to keep things as child-friendly as possible, but every now and then we can hit some harder subject matters or may even have some verbal discourses that may not be suitable for younger or more sensitive ears to hear. In this episode, there may be either a discussion on more mature topics or may have strong language, or perhaps both at once. Your discretion is advised.
Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
How entertaining can it get when the supernatural, cryptozoological, and extraterrestrial combine in one of the newest hit manga and anime around? This is Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest to the Geeks. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, joined today by, of course, the greatest yokai of all. That's so mysterious that you can never see him. You can never wonder where he's at until he appears. TJ Blackwell, how's it going, TJ?
Good, thanks.
Excellent. But we're not alone today. We're joined by a special guest, Mark Flower. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing fantastic today. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, know where you come from, what you do?
Sure. I met a couple of you guys back in Theology Beer Camp back in Colorado. I think it was in October in the fall. I run a podcast called Grub Grace here on the screen here. So you can find that anywhere podcasts are. I just started up actually right around that same time that I met Will and a few of the other people. But the whole idea is the best conversation comes around the table. So around food and everything like that. So around that premise, I tackle topics as lots of Christianity type of topics, like, the Bible, religion, all that kind of stuff. But then I also dig into more of the fun topics, like what we're talking today, like comics, manga, anime, all that kind of stuff, and video games, music, everything like that too. So I tackle a whole range of topics. I think my most recent topic I came out with was about Christian nationalism. So I attempt to tackle everything. I mean, it's just conversation, just getting around with friends and just kind of doing that. So
what have you guys been geeking out on recently?
So me actually, Jurassic Park. Last night, instead of watching the Super Bowl, I watched Jurassic Park 1, 2, 3, and World.
Wow, what a night.
Yeah, I would have watched the rest, but I wanted to go to sleep at that point.
How about you, Mark?
I'm more of a manga person, anime, all that kind of stuff. So right now, of course, One Piece is always an ongoing thing. But I've been really getting into, what was the series called? Kagurabachi. I don't know. My Japanese is really bad.
Kagurabachi.
You know that one? That one's a great one.
So good.
The Ultimate Exorcist, Kyoshi. Another one, what's it called? Oh, it's really good. Wild Strawberry is really good. Chainsaw Man, all those. I mean, I could list off a bunch of them, but I kind of rotate through them as they come out.
Perfect. Yeah, I just stopped watching, finished, I should say, Galaxy Express 999, which is one of the older classic Matsumoto Leiji anime out there. Basic premise is if you go on this intergalactic train across the stars to these different planets, eventually at the end you can get yourself your own robotic body, and it's this journey of what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to love one another, to work with each other, what makes us so different and everything. It's very fun. It's very bloated, but it's very fun with over 100 episodes. So yeah, there's that. So gentlemen, today we're discussing Dandadan season 1 specifically is what we've been asked to do. So I don't know. Beforehand, I know I've caught up with the manga. TJ, are you caught up with the manga?
I'm 2 chapters behind.
Okay.
Maybe.
How about you, Mark?
2 or 3.
With most recent chapters, yeah, I've been catching up with all those. Yeah.
Okay. So I knew we were going to have someone else on here who would not have been there, but we're just going to focus solely on this, even though we might be able to sprinkle a couple things here. So you'll probably hear spoilers today. If that's something that you're not big on, you know what? Go in peace. We'll meet you next time. So, gentlemen, how would you describe the manga anime extravaganza that is Dandadan?
You want to go ahead?
I don't even know where to start.
That's a loaded question.
It's like something you come up with in middle school. Like, what if aliens and cryptids fought each other? Like,
you're not wrong.
There's so much more though.
I think it's a beautiful fusion of the teenage angst, along with the mysticism and the unknown of the universe. It's like this beautiful, it encompasses like the comedy along with this like almost like a Junji Ito sort of vibe. There's like creepy ghost sort of vibe to it. So it's got this whole everything all in one package sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, explaining what Dandadan is, basically, we've got our two main characters. We've got Ken Takakura, who will be known as Okarun for the rest of the show, because of our other main character, Momo Iyase. Both of them are in high school. She is super into, the spiritualism side of things because she has been raised by an exorcist, essentially, for all these past time, but she has grown away from that because of all the ridicule that she suffered under it. And Okarun is a kind of, classic nerdy guy who's super into, his hyper fixation right now is on like cryptids and aliens and wants to discover that they're real. And he's always wanted to find an alien so he could be friends with one. And the two of them, through some shenanigans, end up like challenging the other to go scout out a location to see, an alien's been sighted here or a yokai has been sighted here. And they find that they're very, very real. And through this, parts of the body are lost and are now like the MacGuffin of the series to try and find them. And they just find more weird and quirky characters who are fighting against other weird and quirky characters to try and stop the Earth from being invaded and stop yokai from taking over parts of the Earth. It's a lot of good fun. That is some things I'm not big on, but we'll get to that later on. But for the most part, I am in it to win it with this series. So speaking of, what is it about this series that we love?
It's so goofy. It's so silly, but it's also very real. Like it's so intense. And then, they'll go through this fight scene. They'll fight a giant monster. And then they'll be like, oh, right. Okarun's left testicle. Finally. That's what we've been after this whole time.
Yes.
And he's missing
in
his
the face of
penis
absurdity.
balls like the entire series pretty much.
Yeah, the whole shebang. He's just lost it all. That's what we're after. Christian danced around the topic. I will not be. That is exactly what happens.
I was leaving it for someone else to do that dirty work for me. Because this is one of those series, you know how hard it is sometimes to convince your friends to get into anime or read a manga because, okay, well, here's the premise. And you go, what? Why would I ever read that? No, trust me, it gets good.
Yeah,
this one starts off good from the get-go, like from the very first episode. It is fantastic. I mean, I started watching like 10 minutes and I'm like, this is engaging already. And then it just picks up the pace. It goes from 10 to like 200%. And it's just, it just keeps that level just the entire time.
Yeah. I just happened to have a friend over the day the first episode came out and he had never read Dandadan or didn't even know it was coming out. I was just like, oh, dude, you should watch this. We should watch this. It's out today. You'll like it. He did not. He did not like it. He was like, what? What are we watching? It's like, it's a Peak. We're watching Peak. This is one of the best series out. Trust me.
Kind of I won't curse here on that. I don't know if you guys are for that or not, but I'll say it's a cluster F. Just, I didn't know what I was watching when I first watched it. You almost had to go to the second episode, kind of regain your composure a little bit as you're watching it and just kind of figure out, okay, this is this is what's going on.
This show, this manga, it's so much fun. Like the drawing is so well done. And this is a weekly, not really a weekly, but it feels like a weekly manga because this is on the Ultra Jump instead of regular Shonen Jump, or it's done a Jump Plus kind of thing, where basically as opposed to the regular Jump, you just kind of release whenever you can, whenever you feel like it. So there's no like set schedule. And yet the way our mangaka here, what is his name? Let me look that up real quick. Yukinobu Tatsu. His work ethic, insane. His attention to detail is amazing. And I'm not an art person by nature, but like I can still appreciate when someone has poured a lot of good work into this, and like that, not to detract from the anime, which is done also extremely well with how they draw fight sequences and character interactions and everything. But there's so much in there. If you're not paying attention to everything, you're going to miss stuff.
Yeah.
But you can also see that there's a great story in here. We've got some great main characters here who then play off of some really good supporting characters. And that's really what I care about more. Your plot will initially is what drive me into watching a show. But like what makes me stay is the characters. And we've got a great cast.
Yeah, well, you got to think about what he was doing before this. Because before he started making Dandadan, he was an assistant on Chainsaw Man and also Hell's Paradise.
Yeah,
at the same time, man. And
that's a good resume.
It's like skill based Nepo baby.
And
Nepo baby for himself.
Yeah, Fujimoto's assistants have gone on to do great things like Hell's Paradise, like Spy Family as well. If I remember correctly, he was also one of his former assistants. So clearly, if you want to work and you want to work well, you learn under Fujimoto, which sounds like a task. I don't know if I want to get inside that man's brain, but I love what he does. So I mentioned the characters being one of my main focuses in the series, what I love. But what about you guys? Do you have a favorite? Keeping ourselves right here for right now.
Oh boy, the character development is so fantastic in the show that I don't know if I have one character that I can really say that stands out as the most. I think Okarun or Takakura is probably the most comedic, just because of him trying to find his junk pretty much the entire time, and just the awkwardness of just being this kind of like nerdy kind of kid that doesn't have any friends and trying to navigate the social circumstances. Of course, Momo is just fantastic. It's just because she just goes off at just anything. She can just gets upset at like every little thing that just happens throughout the show, and all the little nuances and like character flaws within all the characters too. I thought it was kind of funny when Ira came on that. Because she's so narcissistic and egotistical and prideful and thinking that she's like God's gift to humanity. Once she kind of, I don't know how much I want to like give away, but there's certain things that happen that even elevates that narcissism. And she honestly made me think of like an evangelical pastor, like a mega church pastor, just that kind of level of like narcissism. I mean, I'm not talking about like every mega church pastor. It's just that kind of
stereotype.
That stereotype of like mega church pastors. So that's I thought that was kind of comedic when I thought of that a little bit.
Yeah,
we can freely talk spoilers for season 1 since that's what we're covering.
Okay, so she gets one of Oakland's balls. Yeah.
Yeah, this is hard because, we all read the manga, so it's hard to like even know where season 1 is right now. And it's a lot harder to pick out a favorite character just for season 1,
especially since it stops at the beginning of an arc.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I was looking at the outline and I was like, favorite scene. Well, it would have been in the next episode, but it's not. So not that, but it's got to be Turbo Granny for me. Just season 1, it's got to be Turbo Granny.
So Turbo
funny.
Granny before she turns into a cat, or after she turns into a cat?
Oh, cat Granny. Yeah, definitely. Cat Granny is hilarious. It's such a good add to the team. Just like, yeah, this is our evil spirit. She's a cat. She's one of those.
Yeah. She's cantankerous and ornery, and she hates everyone. But you know what? She's part of the team.
And she's so funny. I love her.
Mm.
Yeah, this was difficult for me to answer to, limiting myself to season 1 because my favorite character has not shown up in the anime yet. She will be there later on. Mm-hmm. But for right here and now, it's between Ira and Gigi because I love different aspects of the both of them. like, no, when you're talking about Ira, it's like, yep, I recognize that about myself. I recognize that about myself. I need to be better about that. And it's just so fun to see someone like think so highly of themselves, be humbled, and yet keep certain aspects of that without being like, I haven't learned anything from what happened. And I think Ira's a good example of that. It's like, yeah, she's still haughty. She still thinks she's better than everyone, but she's also learned how to be kind. She's also learned how to take care of other people and be more open about things. Then with Gigi, everyone needs a Gigi in their life. Just that goofy doofus who's there to help make you laugh, who's there to help make everyone okay. Because yeah, he's got his own stuff he's dealing with, but when you first look him up, like in any other anime or manga, he would have been the jerk to being a love triangle between Okaroon, Momo, and Gigi. But here he's like, yeah, he still has feelings for her, but like he's not a jerk about them. He's like, okay, we'll fight for it. We'll also play soccer and we'll goof around. I love my guy.
Yeah, yeah, he's good rival character. It's so unfortunate where it stops. It's so unfortunate because so much happens so soon relative to when season 1 ends.
Which there's that part of me is like, I wish they would keep going, but also knowing how terribly artists are treated, especially in the anime industry, I am very grateful that they have some time off because their work weeks are horrendous. The amount of work that they have to get done is horrendous. So if they can get some sort of a break in that very toxic work culture, I will take it.
Yeah, especially on a series that looks like this. It looks crazy. If you haven't watched Dandadan and you're still watching this, stop what you're doing. Go spend the next 4 hours to watch Dandadan season 1, and then come back, and you'll understand. It's nuts. Literally,
it's beautifully and artistically done. Especially like you were talking about the director of this show that came from like Chainsaw Man, and what was the other one you said?
Hell's Paradise. Like
those are beautifully done, and you can see how that translated into Dandadan as well.
Yeah, it's so zany. I think zany might be the perfect word.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not wrong.
Damn it.
All right, so we talked favorite character. How about favorite scene from what we've seen so far in season 1?
The cow scene. I mean, it happens right after I think one of the most comedic moments in the show. Of right after they beat Nessie, the underwater thing, and then they show up back in school, and like everyone sees them. They're naked, laying on top of each other, and they're just so tired from the fight. But everyone sees that and they're freaking out because they're like, "Oh no, we're naked!" But then it cuts right into the scene where they get to know the creature they were fighting. And they end up giving him a cow because it turns out that cow's milk, or cow's dairy milk, is actually the blood of that creature, of that alien. And then they give him the cow, and it's just such a quick scene. It just happens. They give him the cow, and it zaps it up into the spaceship and takes off. I think that was probably my favorite scene.
It is so funny. It's so funny.
And on top of that, Seiko, is that how you pronounce her name? Seiko?
I think it's Seiko.
Seiko. She, despite everything that she sees, she still does not believe that aliens exist, which is like so funny.
Yeah,
it's just a kappa.
Yep, staunch denier. Big fan. I don't know. For my favorite scene from season 1, I really, really do like their like first alien fight, like where they fight the sumo guy. That's so entertaining to me. Why is he sumo? Who knows? Who cares?
Why
it's
not?
Awesome. It's such a good fight. And like, no, it's just the show's really good. It gets so much better that I wish I could talk about season 2 already, and it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to choose from. I had a hard time with this one too, but I'm going to settle for the sake of having an answer for the train fight with Turbo Granny, and everything that has to work together perfectly in order for Turbo Granny to be sealed away, the trust that Momo and Okaroon have to have in each other for this to be pulled off. Just fantastic, because I think we have 2 really great leads here that immensely flawed, but also immensely fun to watch. And that early scene is what really kind of sets up. Yeah, we've kind of trusted each other before, but like, here's the moment. I think that like we're forever friends after this moment in time. Yeah, because of how it all comes together.
Yeah, I was like, I don't I probably could get 3 or 4 people to help me recover my genitals, but I don't know. It's a tall order. It's a tall ask.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I also think you underestimate yourself. I mean, you are the TJ Blackwell. I mean, everyone, would just jump at the chance to help you with that.
Yeah, I think I have like a hard cut off three people to help. Okaroon is not that unfortunate, as we'll see later. But not in season.
I think a good consolation scene for me is when they finally get the first ball back and they decide how to put it back into Okaroon. And I think it perfectly encapsulates this this awkward transition in the teenage years of this kind of like awkwardness and kind of painful, like, you're going through the acne and like, you're speaking of junk, like your junk's growing out, whether you're, whatever gender or sex you are. And there's just a whole bunch of just like things that just don't make sense. And they decide to, of course, Turbo Granny throws it back into, chucks it pretty much back into him while Seiko tries to, hit it with a baseball bat. It's just this whole comedic scene of this. And of course he's in pain, but then he's like, it's back in. I think that's probably another consolation scene for me for the best scene.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay. And one thing the author does, which is it's cool, you're from Grub Grace, Yokonobu, after we get through the big scenes, every time in this series they eat together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
they overcome this big obstacle and they eat together. Mm-hmm. And his reasoning is like, he just thinks people that work hard deserve to have a good meal. So I know every time he goes home from work, he's just he's chowing down.
Yeah, I really appreciate too, because like is it pretty much every arc in One Piece? It's like, okay, we've earned this giant meal we're about to eat that Luffy can just devour, and everyone else maybe gets something. But like for them, it's like, it's just so well animated. It's like, well, I'm hungry now. Mm-hmm. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and they started this One Piece arc with a feast.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go.
So
all right, so. We've done scene, we've done character. How about, this is going to make things even harder, episode or arc so far?
No, this one's easy. The episode 7, I think it was, where they showed Ira's backstory. Silky's backstory.
I thought that was beautifully done. I'd have to agree with you. I think that was probably the best one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it shows like how deep the show can get, despite the subject matter, in a really phenomenal way, and it's done so well.
Well, it talks about child or abuse in general, child abuse. It talks about death. It talks about overcoming like trauma. It talks about like all these different really heavy aspects, all in this like 1 or 2 episodes that kind of finishes up the arc. So I agree with like that. It shows you how deep the show can go. Despite how being like campy and funny and just like off the wall and corny this is. But yeah, it takes a whole 180 with those couple episodes.
Yeah, it's so good.
And especially, he's still building off parts of that arc in the current arc in the manga with a certain character that appears there as well and how she's affected by Ira's decisions. So I love a good continuity-based story. You can do that. There's a reason I do love One Piece as well. Not that it's a One Piece show right now, but it just like bringing up the similarities, like of what I come for. I come for characters. I come for world building. I come for bringing up things that happened before and how they connect to things. And I think Dandadan does that phenomenally. How about you, Mark? Your favorite episode or arc in this season?
Well, I'd have to agree with it. I think the Ira backstory, I think clearly that is, to me, that is the best. So I agree with T over there. That it's just that depth that you get with the show. I think what makes a show really good, doesn't matter what show it is if it has depth, if it's not very surface level, if it actually gives you more to think about and more to kind of process than just the surface level like comedy or surface level just storytelling is when you get that more meat and substance to it.
Okay. Yeah, solid choice. Both of you. For the sake of episode, I'm choosing 9, which is kind of the big battle between our Dover Demon, Nessie, and then Okaroon, Ira, Momo, as they're the school is kind of in this weird time space where they're away from everyone else, and now they have to try and fight, actual Nessie. They have to fight a punching mantis shrimp, and all these things are going on. And they're also learning how to work together with three people who are very not like each other and also very much like each other at the same time, having to learn, okay, let's compensate for that. Let's work together here. And then coming out on top, quite literally on each other in a very not flattering position. I think it worked extremely well, especially when the sake of that arc, because like the mantis shrimp could just be some generic mook. Mm-hmm. But then we spend an episode after like humanizing him. And then like, why would he agree to join this? Why would he help the Serpoians, whatever they are? But because he's a mercenary, because his son is dying of a rare disease. And like, yeah, it's a cliche plot, but like it's done extremely well. It makes you feel for him. It makes you think, oh, well, now he's a part of the team. He's not staying with everyone, but he's part of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a vital part too.
Yeah.
Like current day, probably like a top 4 character for me.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, great choice.
It is a good character to have on top there. Yeah.
So we've covered all that. How about we get into more of the meat and potatoes here, like getting closer to the themes and characters. One of the big facets of the series, one of the most important parts it's hinged on, is Momo and Okarun's friendship and their relationship. So what are our thoughts on their interactions and how well that they play off of one another?
I think it's so cute. It's like, I have the feeling it has to be reminiscent of like teachers when they see students that they think should date. And like watching the students like get to know each other, that has to be what it feels like for them. It's so cute to watch.
I like it. Mark?
Yeah, I agree. It is cute to watch. It feels very much like, I think one of you guys brought it up in the very first part of the recording here, is that it feels like a middle school wrote this whole kind of love arc between this. And then not just that, you get this love triangle and love quadrilateral, whatever you call it, between like all 4 of them. But specifically between Momo and Okarun, I think it's just a fantastic. I think it really shows like the that teenage angst that I was talking about, the them trying to navigate through the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the physical awkwardness of the love and the sparking feelings for each other and everything. So, and just navigating life in general with this other person that is so diametrically opposed to each other. So,
it's like Comey Can't Communicate or Nagatoro, whatever that series is called, or Dress Up Darling, but it's actually good, and like I want them to be together. Mm-hmm. I'm actually cheering for Momo and Okarun.
Mm-hmm. Slammed 3 series in a row. 2 out of 3 I kind of care about. Not a fan of Nagatoro. So yeah, I agree with what my co-host is saying here. Their relationship is so phenomenal. Just not even, I ship it hard. Like, there's no other way to say it. I ship it pretty dang hard, the 2 of them together. But their friendship is also so well done in the show, in this manga as well. Just these 2 people who are, TJ, I think you said diametrically opposed. Yeah, you've got a huge like fangirl. Oh, Mark said that. Oh, sorry,
that's good.
My memory's not the best. Yeah, they're so diametrically opposed in that. Momo is a huge fangirl of the specific actor Takakura who exists in real life, but she's also a huge tsundere about things and a very gruff and kind of gal. And Okarun's your typical closet, geek otaku who's like doesn't really stand up for himself, is very meek. And you would think, well, they had nothing in common. Yet when they actually talk with each other, when they actually bond with each other over these very scary experiences, they learn, there's enough here for us to have a friendship, to hang out with one another, learn more about each other, and then just start developing feelings for each other, which, I always love that. It's a shame Pang isn't here for this one, because I know that's exactly what she'd be talking about. And I can't blame her, because I also kind of ship Ira and Gigi. But that's another thing happening way later on. But for our specific 2 main characters, they just play off of each other so extremely well. Momo's gruffness, Okarun's meekness, and like them rubbing off on one another, Momo becoming more kind, more caring, Okurum starting to stand up for himself as a result of this. And yes, this show also doesn't do that thing that I hate so much, especially in romantic comedies or romantic anime, where a misunderstanding is there and then no one talks. No. They force the issue. They actually say, hey, look, this is what you saw. Let's actually discuss what actually happened so that we don't have, 5, 10 chapters, episodes where, oh, does he really like me? Or he was in her arms. It's like, no. Let's have a discussion here. And they work because they're just that blunt with each other. And they can do that because of everything they've done with each other. So I believe that when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So another huge part of the show, obviously, is our monsters, our aliens, the supernatural. So let's go in order. Like what are our thoughts on how the more supernatural, spiritual elements are handled within this series?
At this point, season 1, it's kind of. I remember thinking early that like, why do they both exist? What are we doing here? So like, they'll have cryptozoological elements, and then they'll be like, oh, that's actually just an alien, but there are also spirits. The spirits definitely are just spirits, not aliens. I think it's really interesting what they choose to show, because we're American, you hear, and so we're not super familiar with all of the yokai that get represented here, because pretty sure they're not in Yokai Watch. That's not quite how that series works. And that's most young people's exposure to what yokai are in general for, like the target audience of this series. So it's really just kind of fun to learn about what's going on.
Mark?
Yeah. This definitely introduced me a lot to, like you were talking about, like yokai and the folklore, ghosts, and the stories and the culture of Japan and surrounding countries around Japan. And it definitely made me dig a lot into like the different creatures, like the different yokai, the different alien that are represented, and what they actually like, the references and the Easter eggs of inspiration that they pulled from in real life. Like in real life, the aliens and yokai aren't actually similar, but in the show they kind of blend the two together, and they actually bring up theories within the show, talking about how they're actually might be very similar to each other. Like in the show they have like the aliens and the yokai are able to bring beings into this kind of like empty dimension space, free from the other humans. So anyone that has kind of the spiritual kind of power. So that's why like Okurum and Momo and I are able to kind of come into these empty space dimensions, and both alien and yokai are both able to go in there too. So it kind of alludes to the fact that they might actually be more similar than not. And there might actually be some reason to that. And they kind of talk about that in the show as far as, Okurum brings up a theory that maybe the yokai are protecting the earth from alien invasion, and the aliens are actually trying to be there, and the aliens are trying to get the power from the humans that get the power from the yokai. And it's like this whole kind of thing that kind of goes in. So I thought it was really interesting how they kind of took inspiration from real folklore and then made this whole fun story. And if you know anything about where the inspiration of the show even came from, it came from Ultraman, and I'm sure you're gonna kind of get into that a little bit too.
Oh yes.
So I think I'm just looking now at the document you have, so I'm sure that blends into the next question, but it's just super fascinating kind of digging into everything.
Yeah, I really feel like,
Go ahead.
and maybe I'll be wrong, hopefully I'll be wrong, I think it'd be a better story if I was wrong, but I think at the end of this series, one of them's going to be right. Either there were no yokai or there were no aliens. Everything they fought was just one of them, like through like dimorphic evolution or something. One of them was wrong. I feel like that's going to be the end piece to this series. Yeah, I do think it would be a pretty funny last panel.
Mm-hmm.
But that's later.
Focusing on the supernatural side of things, like as opposed to you two, like I have studied yokai extensively, and I say that and I still don't know every one of them because there are hundreds, if not thousands. Because, when you go, like we've discussed previously on other shows, when you go to Shintoism, everything kind of has not exactly just a soul, but has a desire to be, how do I want to word this? Goodness gracious. I would have said it earlier. can be worshipped in a way, in a sense. And the human beings have an ability to project onto those things and grant them power through like kind of tulpa-ish kind of ability. And then you get to yokai, and there's like, well, this region in Japan has this specific version, this region in Japan has this specific version. They're the same thing. It's the same continuity, even though there's no like one grand person writing the script for here's how this yokai is supposed to be. So if it has different aspects in a different story, well, that's fine, because unlike something like as someone like me takes with scripture more seriously, like there's no canon to things, as opposed to yokai. You can make up whatever you want, and that's fine. So when a series like this comes up, well, of course Turbo Granny does all these things. Of course, as we get later, Kuchisaki Onna can do this, or Acro Silky can do this. So I love the way it builds off of stuff like, well, I can do whatever I want, and that's fine, because built on the same premise of we can do whatever we want. You can make a story where you can do whatever you want with it, while still keeping aspects of what came before. And I think they play that really well. I think this comes a lot too with Seiko and Momo's relationship too, of how she's viewed her as a fraud all these years, or like knowing it's not true the entire time. But there's that great scene where she's on that like public access show or whatever it is, and she's talking about this celebrity, and she's saying, well, you do this, no I don't, well, you like this, no I don't, and then everyone thinks that she's a fraud. Then like later on it's revealed she was right about everything there, but it's built on the premise that she can only use those powers within this specific region of Japan, which is also something super special in like the belief system there. So I think it does a tremendously great job of building all that up on the supernatural side of things. All right, well, how about cryptozoological?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I looked up a lot of these kind of characters. Like Turbo Granny, she's based off of a legend just like that. It's Turbo Granny. So this whole legend that there's on the like dark night roads in the middle of the night, this older woman would start running after a car at top speed and try to knock on the side of the car to get the person to crash. Or the folklore goes that might be another person in another car, another old lady, and she's trying to run the person off the road, and it's trying to, a lot of people assume, might be to keep people to drive safer. And then you get the aliens there. There's a whole bunch with that, like the Flatwoods monster with the like you were talking about the sumo earlier. It's one of your favorite scenes. The Flatwood monster doesn't actually show up like a sumo. They took kind of royalties with that. He kind of looks like he has a collar head shaped like an ace of spades. So it's more of like a Western sort of idea. But then the theory goes on that it starts showing up across the world. Like, Okurin starts talking about that, and the mantis shrimp, that he's like the Dover demon. So, it's kind of fascinating, the real world, reference to all these.
Yeah, they're taking a lot of liberties with the original creatures. And some of this, like the Dover Demon, is like this maybe 2 to 3 foot tall creature that just appeared in the town of Dover and was seen by a couple of people one night and then pretty much never again. So there's debate. Is it an alien? Is it an actual creature that lived there? Is it some kind of paranormal spirit? It's most definitely not a giant mantis shrimp that likes punching people, but it's still fun what they do with it. That breaks like the canonicity of the actual sightings, but it's done in a fun way, so I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Bigfoot is just going to be like Shaquille O'Neal. Straight up, it's just going to be Shaquille O'Neal.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that in the show.
Yeah, which I wouldn't doubt at all. If people just saw Shaq in the woods, I would probably call the cops. Or animal control. That's scary.
My gosh.
I get it.
I'd want to get his autograph.
You see Shaq sprinting through the woods, but you can't. But if you can't tell it's Shaq,
yeah.
I've never been right beside him, but I was at a game in Charlotte when he was playing against the Hornets, and I was close enough to him and go, "That is a tall human being. That is an impressive specimen of a man. I am nothing before him."
Yeah, just go to Staples. And hopefully your Staples still has the Shaquille O'Neal cardboard cutout. I take a picture next to ours every time I'm in there. It's super funny. I'm 5'6". He's a foot and 8 inches taller than me. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it goes to with like anybody taller. I mean, you got like Under the Giant or anything like that.
Do you love systematic ecology as much as I do? Of course you do. So why don't you hop on over to the Systematic Ecology shop and get yourself some merch. We have clothing like hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies. We even have glassware and mugs. One of my favorite coffee mugs that I use every morning is a coffee mug that has on it, share the faith, share the geek. Yeah, I get my geek on first thing every morning, thinking of systematic geekology. And I know you need to hop over there and get you some merch, represent us out in the wild, out in the public, and let people know that you too like to share the faith and share the geek.
I mean, if Andre the Giant was also running towards me in the forest and he was saying, "Hey, you want a cookie?" Like, I'd probably still run too.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to be my friend?
But it's like anybody that's tall. It kind of goes.
But at least
I don't know, man.
Yeah, kind of goes an idea of like the Nephilim too. I mean, like, you know, the tall giants and everything like that. So even in the Western, like, and that's not even the Western. That's back with like the book of like Enoch and like in the early Genesis and everything like that. But so I guess Middle Eastern countries right in there. But yeah, I mean, all these like folklore and everything like that kind of come from all around the world, and it's cool to see that they're even pulling, because even in the very first episode, Okarun is talking, or Okarun. He's talking about how the United States government just classified UAPs. They're not UFOs anymore, the UAPs, and they're talking about they declassified some of this information about how they're seeing some of this stuff. So they're bringing in influence from all around the world with this whole show.
Yeah, and I do want to say, and then I'll move on from real life people. At least Andre the Giant and Shaq are like proportional. Like if you just saw their silhouette, it'd be like, okay, that's a person, obviously. But if you look at people like Victor Wembanyama, who is 3 inches taller than Shaquille O'Neal and like 100 pounds lighter, that's a scary image.
Slender man.
Yeah. Crazy player too. That guy's nuts.
All right. So we've done the other two. It's time for extraterrestrials. We kind of covered a little bit earlier as well. But like, what are feelings on how extraterrestrials are covered in this show?
They're awesome.
Real quick. Before that, Mark has brought up a great point, and that if you know your Ultraman, you know how much of a nerd our writer is for this series, because some designs are straight up ripped from the original, Tokusatsu show, and more. Like when we finally get to My Girl Vamola, we'll see Gamora basically as her kaiju suit. Spoiler, sorry, I couldn't help it. But like the alien influence here is done extremely well too. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, nope, it's awesome. That's all I have to say. It's sick. They're so cool.
It's awesome, yeah.
Because once again, this is built on the premise of, okay, if you're actually thinking these things through, which I think our author did, which is why he has that scene fairly early on where he's like, okay, well, if aliens are real, why haven't they just taken over the Earth? Well, in a series like this, was because they have no counter to the yokai. And like human beings are just not even a player, really, outside of those with spiritual abilities. They're typically coming from yokai. So the world hasn't been taken over because the world kind of already is taken over in a sense by yokai. So the fighting between the two, it's always one of those classic like who would win scenarios. You know, who's going to win? You know, a European knight or a Japanese samurai, or who's going to win? You know, the Dover demon or the Turbo Granny. Like we could throw that into the mix, and we can do that in a fun series like this, and it's just played off so fantastically well.
That's well put.
Yeah. So one of the things that I believe the show does best is establish villains or people with villainous intent, and then give them reasonable motivations, for making them act the way that they do. You think this is a fair assessment of the series or off base?
Yeah, no, that it seems pretty accurate so far. I mean, there's no they don't do the sociopath thing where the villain's just evil because. So yeah, I agree.
Well, I do want to bring in Ultraman with this because I feel like this is a great segue into the Ultraman influence for the show. So I never actually watched Ultraman. I kind of regret it. I'd never heard about it before. Well, actually, I think I'd heard about it before because I think they just came out with that Netflix thing. It's like the updated Ultraman, the new series. But I didn't know much about it. So researching this topic, I learned quite a bit about it. And the whole idea of Ultraman was that Ultraman was this, I think it was an alien that merged with humans to fight, these other creatures. But Ultraman understood that these creatures aren't innately evil. They're not innately bad that, intend to just destroy. There's a lot more to it. They're part of nature. And the whole idea was to bring peace and science to take down these creatures and to stop them instead of destroying them. So it was kind of a push away from using like militaristic power and finding alternative ways to try to combat this. And I thought they kind of brought that into it, like talking about the acrobatic Silky. They fight her, but then in the end, it ends up being that they kind of have this dialogue with her, and that because Ira dies, that this acrobatic Silky, that's what her goal was. She just wanted to be with Ira, and they realized that, and they're able to work with her and figure out a different solution for this whole mess that they're in. So I thought that was really beautiful that they kind of brought a lot of that aspect into the show as well.
Yeah. I say in the Ultraman side of things, it kind of depends on the series, really. It's all over the place. With 20-some series, you're going to get different opinions thrown into the mix. But most of the time, he's not there to be like, everything I fight against is evil, or whichever Ultraman is there. Ultraman Cosmos is probably the most peaceful out of all of them, in that he does everything in his power not to kill whatever kaiju is threatening them, or robot, or what have you, because they, as you said, they're a part of nature. They exist here. There are very few villains in the Ultraman franchise who are just like, we're just always chaotic evil. We're just gonna like kill everything in our path because we are evil, because that's what evil people do. So yeah, it's a great point brought up there. And I think Aqua Silky was just perfect too, because she lost her daughter, and it was turned into the way she was as a result of regret and not being able to save her. And then she sees Ira call her mom, just seeing her vaguely spiritually there for a moment. And they're not related, but in the moment they've created a relationship built off of two people who need each other, even if they don't understand each other completely. And then it's done extremely well, because everything she does there is to protect Ira, is to, do what she couldn't do for her own daughter. That's just fantastically done.
And the same thing goes with the Mana Shrimp too, the Dover Demon Mana Shrimp. They found a solution. I mean, he was, like you were talking about, he was, he was down on his luck and became a mercenary because he wanted to have this blood transfusion for his child, and he needed to make money for it. So he's taking all these risky roles of, being a mercenary, paid for hire mercenary. And when it was just a simple solution is he just needed a cow.
Anything for you, TJ?
No, they're great. I haven't watched Ultraman a lot, so to me, these are just cool villains that are good and motivated. Also, my actual favorite character is an antagonist, but not in the series yet. So
I think I know who you're talking about, but I won't say anything.
Hey. Yeah. If it's what I'm thinking of, very interesting. Okay. So one of the things that's brought up as a shot against the show, and part of which I'm actually kind of behind, is does the more childish humor in the show lessen its effectiveness or enhance it?
Better.
Definitely makes it better.
2 against 3, 2 against 1. Okay. Yeah. So let me hear you.
It's funny.
I think it's great when you have this opposing kind of sorry, I bumped the opposing kind of theme with the serious, with the funny. I think it kind of alleviates some of the seriousness with some of the funniness and the campiness. So I think it helps it out quite a bit.
Yeah. I think it helps to take a step back from yourself, away from the wittiness and the cynicism of what is common, or like the quippy Marvel dialogue that has become so popular, to just, oh man, they're laughing about nuts. That's funny.
See, that's what's so great about the show, is that we have diametrically opposed viewpoints like this, because I despise this childish humor for the most part. Not saying I've never laughed at it, because I was also a kid at one point in time, but it's just not funny to me. I think it's lazy. I almost, as I was reading the first chapter, like, man, do I really want to continue doing this? Because like these jokes are not landing for me. There was that part of me, do I drop this? It's like, no, I'll keep going, because Mama didn't raise no quitter. And I'm glad, because eventually it won me over with some really great characterization, really great story, world building, all that stuff I talked about before. But then you get stuff like, I'm not a big fan of, them all, when they're in that negative kind of space, and then, oh no, our clothes aren't off. Ah, ha, ha, ha. That kind of humor just doesn't land for me. I know it does for you guys, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. How dare you laugh at something I didn't laugh at? But it just doesn't work for me.
Christian with the bad opinions.
Hey, Joshua isn't here. I had to have at least one. Okay. Knowing him, you said, oh, I love this show. But compared to other anime, it's a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, he probably would.
And we've all traveled to his new home which they rightfully deserve and would have beat them up for it. But you know what? That's fine. Guys, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up before we start to wrap things up?
This is, if I hadn't already, and I don't even remember what series made me start doing this. I do, actually. It was Attack on Titan. Mm-hmm. If I hadn't already started doing that thing where I'll watch the first season of an anime and then read the entire manga to catch up, this series probably would have made me start.
That's high praise.
Yeah, it definitely made me start reading the manga. I'd seen it on my list before, but the little cover art didn't really engage me to want to read it. But then after watching the show, I'm just like, okay, I got to start reading this now because I got to know more. In my little research here, I found out that the same actor for Okarun was the same voice actor, the Japanese voice actor for the series of Tokyo Ghoul, the Ken Kaneki. And then also Momo and Okarun also show up in a cameo in a Marvel Academy Marvel's Voice Infinity comic issue number 31, which just came out a couple weeks ago in January 29th. So they are officially in the Marvel universe.
Everything leads back to Marvel. Yeah, no, I love
in Marvel Rivals.
No, I love when artists do that. Just throw like there's one in a very terrible Dan Slott run, Fantastic Four, where in the background, I think like Vegeta is on like this alien planet they're at. I know at one point in time in Green Lantern, he essentially made Gurren Lagann with his power ring to fight against someone. When people throw stuff like this in, like they win me over. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's not quite the same, but Steven Spielberg will do it sometimes. If you go watch Jurassic Park, the scene where they're getting mad at Nedry for being Nedry, in one of the windows that's open on his computer, he's watching Jaws.
That's great. I never noticed that before.
Yeah, it's really funny. And it's just barely on the screen.
Perfect. All right. So, as mentioned earlier, we like doing bonus questions for these things. Today, our bonus question for those who want to support us through Patreon Captivate is, what supernatural, cryptozoological, or extraterrestrial entity would we like to see the gang fight against next? And now that we've read the manga, I know that we can all name something that hasn't been fought there. So I'm interested to hear what everyone's choice is going to be. So before we go any further, rating and reviewing out of 10, how do we feel about this show?
8.5.
I'd say 6.5 mana strip out of 6.5.
Okay.
No, I think it's pretty good. So,
okay. Yeah, I'm giving this a solid 9. I love what they're doing here. I have my gripes with some of the stuff, especially some of the stuff that comes later. Their characters I really love, and characters I'm like, I want to love you, but we're gonna have to have a talk. But if just season 1 alone, I think giving it a 9 is fine. I might go higher than 9.5 as manga goes on. If it keeps going on and keeps having the quality it may end up being a 10 one day. I really enjoy this series. It's a ton of good fun. There's some parts that if you're like me, you just have to just move past it. They're doing what they're doing. But yeah.
Are we not making up our rating schedule? It's out of 10? I'd probably go 9.5.
Okay. I typically do 10 because that leaves more of an option for me instead of like on a 5, because I feel like, what's a 4 and a 5 is, you know what?
Yeah.
You said mentally, your own personal?
I rate all anime on a scale of 1 to 86 mentally, and then I just
why 86
to 1 out of 10. Have you ever seen Initial D?
I think I've seen a little bit of it.
That's a Toyota.
Oh wait, no, I have seen that one. Yeah, they made a Korean movie based off that one. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right, as we start heading to the wrap up, guys, do you have a recommendation for the audience to check out? Could be anime, could be manga, could be anything that exists.
I know it takes a lot more effort to check it out than some other things, but if you haven't gotten onto it yet, you got to play Marvel Rivals. Even if you're not a fan of the hero shooter genre, I think it's great fun to just get in there and pick a hero you like if you're fast enough and have fun.
I'd say the manga Astro Baby. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that one. It just started, I think, sometime this last year. It is fantastic. So the whole premise is that there's this alien species that comes down to Earth, and they take over humans and use the humans' form to basically propagate themselves and to multiply. and basically the humans that are trying to stop them, but one of them teams up. So the main character teams up with one of these aliens and take down the rest of the aliens. So very interesting, and it's one of those that has pretty good art style and everything like that.
All right. I'm going to choose a movie I just watched not too long ago. A Korean film, I Saw the Devil. And if you actually watch the movie, you're going to go, Christian, you like that movie? Well, yes. But there are certain parts, there's some graphic stuff in there, not for all audiences. It's also a very bleak film, and I typically don't gravitate towards that, but I think it earned its ending, which is how you can win me over with, something that kind of goes on the darker side of things. So I Saw the Devil, pretty great movie. Guys, thank you all for all you do. Please, if you get a chance, leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. If you're on YouTube right now, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let us know how we're doing. As well, you can reach out to us at systematicecology@gmail.com if you've got like a specific episode you want us to cover. We love doing that. I believe, Mark, you actually reached out to Josh about this episode, didn't you?
I reached out. I was just asking if you guys will do an episode because I wanted to hear what you guys said, and then he asked if I wanted to be on it. So I was like, hell yeah, I want to. So, yeah, I'm glad you got up to me.
So, hey, we wouldn't have had this episode with Mark here if that had not happened. So let us know. We love doing stuff like this. So, guys, as well, thank you. Shout out to some supporters. Thank you, Ethan Overcash, Austin Nance, Amber Riley, and Jonathan Augustine. You guys are the best. We love what you do. But remember, we're all the chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
If you'd like to support our show on Captivate, feel free to go to captivate.fm and find our show, subscribe. You'll get access to any future online D&D campaigns over there. You'll get an extra bonus question for 4 to 8 times a month. You'll get extra content like that through there. You also get a one-time donation you could make to help support the show right on Captivate. So you don't get anything for the one-time donation, but if you would like to just support the show once, do a quick donation, you can do that through captivate.fm. Our overhead includes editing software, marketing, equipment, recording software, and a whole lot of other stuff. And we really appreciate everybody who can help keep the lights on.
Hello, friends. If you like systematic ecology, then there's a host of other podcasts in our network that we think you will like just as much. And so we're part of the Anazal Ministry Podcast Network, and we hope that you can hop over and subscribe with all the podcasts that are on our network. Like, for instance, The Homily, which is, Pastor Will Rose's sermon here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. You have another podcast called The Whole Church Podcast, the OG, the originals, the beginner of it all. Yes, Joshua Noel and TJ working for unity among the church and having great conversations with the wide spectrum of those who are involved in Christian ministry and the church. You have My Seminary Life by Brandon Knight, who's discussing what he's learning in seminary, he is learning in his theological studies and bringing to the surface those big things that we're wrestling with and thinking through theologically in the church and beyond. There's the Let Nothing Move You podcast from Christian Ashley, who is walking through the Bible in a very Bible study type fashion and walking through the biblical narrative. You have Dummy for Theology. I don't think Joshua is a dummy, but hey, he's going to lift up theological themes that he's thinking about and wrestling with. And maybe there's not a lot of answers, but there's definitely a lot of great questions out there that he's lifting up with some great theologians across the whole spectrum of Christianity. And then there's the Bible After Hours. Man, if you like to get risky, if you like to get controversial, there's this foul-mouthed preacher who goes through the Bible from a more progressive point of view, challenging the status quo of the modern church. Yeah, you don't want any kids around with that podcast. And then you have the Clydes, one of my favorite couples that I like to listen to. One of the hosts here on Systematic Ecology, Taylor and Elizabeth Clyde, go through weekly discussions and kind of a devotional, conversational method of what's going on in their lives, where they see God moving in their lives, and what God is up to in the world. So those are the podcasts, a part of the AMP network. Subscribe, follow. We hope you can be a part of all that great network with the wonderful podcasts at AMP.